covers to me is like recess. Like it's super fun.
Hi, Casey. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Thank you very much for coming to this very special episode of Harp Connection. And
Of
before
course.
we start, why don't you tell a little bit about your music journey? Because most of my audience are harpists and they may not be familiar with your work.
Sure. So I started writing songs when I was 11 years old, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. And then when I was 18, I graduated from high school and then moved to Los Angeles to start a career as a singer-songwriter. And I got signed to an independent label soon after that and put out my first record when I was 19. And since then, I've put out 29 records in 26 years, which seems crazy to me when I think about it. But then I signed to a publishing deal, which is a songwriting contract in 1997 in Los Angeles. And that ended in 1999. And then I moved to Chicago and I lived there for a few years and kind of was under the radar for a little while. I didn't really even do any performing or anything when I lived there. I just wrote a lot. It's kind of a dark time for me. I wasn't sure what to do with the music industry. It was kind of feeling like it was defeating me. Los Angeles was very cutthroat and very difficult. So I had some successes, but a lot of failures. That's just the way it goes when you're in these businesses, the entertainment business. There's a lot of rejection, a lot of failure. But then I had a dream all my life to live in New York, but I was afraid of it because it's so expensive. But in 2002, I just took the plunge and moved to New York. And 4 months later, I signed to Sony and then got to make a very expensive record on a big giant label, and that was an amazing experience. But then the Sony merged with BMG, and all the people that I was working with got fired. So because of the politics of how things were going, my album was very underpromoted. So it didn't do very well, but it did decently enough that I have fans all over the world. So I'm very, under the radar, but I'm okay with that now. But in 2005, I asked Sony to let me out of my contract because I saw the writing on the wall, and they did. And then I started my independent career, and I've been independent ever since. And I found that that's just a much better fit for me because the corporate music world and I just didn't really mix very well. So I'm still making music, although I haven't put out a record in 4 years. So we'll see what the future holds. But yeah, that's pretty much been my journey.
Wow. Well, we're definitely going to go revisit some of those topics. But before we start, the first video evidence of you playing the harp is a video from July 2012. I think you were in Interlaken at that time, and you were singing to a song Long Way Home while you're playing the harp. What got you interested in the instrument? And I think you play other instruments as well, right? So this is not your first kick at the can when it comes to.
No, it's like my eighth instrument or
Oh my
something like that.
goodness.
I had always been obsessed with harps. I always wanted to play one, but it's not the kind of thing that you can just learn at public school or your parents are just going to buy you a harp. Like that just wasn't going to
Right.
happen. So I was always just really into it though, and I'm a big fan of Lorena McKennitt. So I loved her harp work and just the harp in general. And while I was teaching at Interlochen in 2012, I just stumbled upon a harp in a practice room. So I kind of just took it over. And it's funny because if you look at it, I think I'm playing it backwards. I didn't know at the time like how to play. And that song actually Long Way Home on YouTube is an improv. I just hit record on my phone and started improvising something. So that was just a fun moment for me. But you'll notice I'm like super sweaty. It was like 90 degrees outside and I'm in a cabin in the woods. So that was a really exciting opportunity. And then I bought this harp when I was in London in 2015. We went to an early music store that has lots of early music instruments, and I played this harp and I loved it. So I put it on a credit card and they shipped it to me in the United States, and I've since paid it off, thank goodness. But it was actually only like 1,600 American dollars, so
That's not too
not
bad.
too expensive. So now I have my own, and I love it.
That's awesome. And what other instruments other than the harp do you play?
So I started playing the violin when I was in fifth grade, and then I learned the cello after that. And I can play the viola because I can play the violin. So you just have to do a little bit of shifting with your fingers because it's a larger instrument. And then I started playing the guitar. And that's not true. I started playing the piano when I was 11 years old. And then when I was 17, I started playing the acoustic guitar. And then I learned how to play like a electric bass, which I don't play well, but I can play decently enough. And then I picked up the harp, obviously in 2015. So lots of stringed instruments. Basically, if it has strings on it, I can usually figure it out.
Oh, that's pretty awesome because a lot of people that I know also play other instrument prior to playing the harp.
Mhm.
And some people find it easier to adopt than some others. How was it like for you to go from one string instrument to another?
It was very intuitive for me because they're all so similar in a lot of ways. So once you kind of get used to how stringed instruments work, it's pretty easy to find your way around. And because I played the piano, obviously some harp teachers require you to play the piano for a year first.
Oh,
So once I figured out that the red strings were C's and the blue strings were F's, I was like, oh, this isn't that hard. And I'm not
that's
great
true.
at playing the harp. I do decently, but I taught myself. So I just, I did some YouTube video tutorial kind of things to figure out like finger positions. And I did a lot of practicing and scales and all the boring stuff so that I could actually play pretty decently. But I don't play as well as you by any stretch.
I'm still learning, but I'm very interested in knowing when you then start incorporating harp into your music because you write all your music, you put all your arrangements together. When did the harp start coming into the picture?
That was it. Well, so there's lots of my songs, if you go back, where I'm playing a keyboard harp, because I played all the keyboard, I play all the instruments on my records and I play keyboard parts. So there were a lot of songs where I would use fake harp sounds. But then once I got the real one, that was my album Paper Ships I was making. So that was when I first started incorporating actually playing the harp. It's very difficult because when you hit record, there's nothing you can do about it. So it has to be a perfect take from beginning to end. And so because I was so new at playing the harp, there were a lot of songs that I had to take like 20 takes before I would get one that was usable. And there are still some times that I had to kind of digitally fix
Fix
stuff if
it,
I
yeah.
need to. But that's the glory of the modern world is you can fix things if you need to.
For sure. I think Turning of the Seasons is one of the songs I remember having a harp to
Hmm.
begin with.
I think
Um,
that's one of the first songs I wrote on the harp exclusively.
that's fun.
Hmm.
Do you generally start writing on a piano before
Yeah,
you get to anything else? Very
usually.
interesting. Hmm. Okay, now back to your very extensive music career. I call myself a Casey Stratton latecomer because a lot of people know your music way back when, and I really only get to start knowing your music in I think it was 2014 when you released Latin Through the Labyrinth.
Mm.
And then I go to your Bandcamp store and then I realize there's a whole lot more going on. And I said, okay, Victoria, you need to hold your horse and slow down a little bit. You have done many different types of music. I've heard folk music, there's holiday music, there's your original song, you have write for plays and whatnot. But there's a very distinctive Casey Stratton sound that sort of weave everything together that like it's unmistakable. So how do you maintain that consistency? Is that something you do intentionally to make sure there's a little bit of that same flavor throughout, or does it just happen on its own?
I think it's a mixture of those things. I think my approach is always the same, no matter what kind of music I'm making. So if I'm going to make a folk song record, I'm going to approach the recording of it the same way, or the arrangements the same way that I would approach my own work. I mean, it's of course it'll be a little different if it's a folk record. I'll probably have a lot more violin and things going on. But I think it's just the way I hit the ground running with things, and it's just my I don't know if it's my signature or what you would call it, but it's just the way my aesthetic. It's the music that I like, the kind of music that I like. I like things that are very cinematic and kind of sweeping and big, large, or very emotional. And I approach singing the same usually always, and I definitely have a distinct way of singing that is my own, or has become my own over time. It's interesting for me though as a composer because I can hear different seasons of my work. Like I'll hear a song where like it might randomly come up on my iPhone and I'll be like, oh, that's got to be from between 1998 and 2001 because
Right.
that was I had there's certain little compositional things that I tend to do in different phases of my career, and I don't know if a lot of my fans pick up on that. Some of them might, but I can usually tell what period a piece is from, just like you would if you were listening to like Beethoven or someone. You could be like, oh, that's early in his work, oh, that's in the middle
Right.
period. So it's just I don't know. There's a kind of a magic about how recording works because I just kind of piece it together as I go. I have a plan, but it's not very well. I mean, I've learned, I guess I should say, you can't plan too much because it's going to end up totally different than what you expected. So it's better to just say, okay, I think I want it to be this feeling or this kind of vibe to this song, and then you just start going. Because again, with digital recording, the greatest thing about it is that you can do a lot and then take things away.
Hmm. And you mentioned that you have left your record deal early and go independent. Is that does that have to do with the fact that you want more control over your artistic freedom? Do you think that's a big part of why you want to be on your own?
Yes. So I was already hoping to sign with an independent label, but in 2002, I signed with a new manager, and she was really adamant that we try for a major label. And I was hesitant because I was like, I don't know that I'm going to enjoy being with a corporate music label because
Mhm.
am very protective of my work. And they did think I was difficult to work with, to be honest, because I was always fighting for myself. But I would say, like, like you have all these different artists. I only have me. So I have to protect that. And I understand that you have certain intentions or things that you need because you have your own bottom line, but I have things that I need. So we have to find a way to meet in the middle, but I'm not going to back down. So I was very, very much vocal about what I would or would not tolerate or do. I said no a lot. They didn't like that. They think, you should be so lucky that you got a deal that you should do whatever they
Mhm.
say. And a lot of artists do act that way, but I was like, mm-mm. And I was in my 20s, so I was a lot more, like willing to take risks than I am now. But yeah, I definitely love having complete control of what I do. I mean, Sony even changed the order of the songs on my album. It wasn't up to me. I don't
Mhm.
like that. I want my albums to be a journey from the beginning to the end. I'm very particular about where the songs go. I'll
Mhm.
move them around over and over and over again until I find what I feel is like the perfect flow for the album. And I still have a very like side A and side B mentality from growing up in
Right.
the 80s. So I think of the album as the first half and the second half, and the second half is always very different. It kind of will build to be much more dramatic in the second half. And all of that is really intentional. So when Sony was just deciding, oh, we need what we think will be the singles to be the first three songs, that's just not how I approach things. So I had to deal with it. But also, I would get like 15 emails a day about like what I looked like, what I wore. They told me I had to wear my glasses all the time. I didn't want to. Like it was just always about what I looked like, and hardly
Mhm.
ever was about music.
Yeah, that's certainly something I find for me it's a turn off for the big commercial music industry in general. But I also realize it's hard to survive independently as a musician, especially when there are so many of us out there. And the work that you do are also very personal. Like you said, you're very particular about it. You are telling a story about your experience, maybe experience that are people in your life, and it comes with a lot of vulnerability when you're in that position. How do you handle the vulnerability of being an independent musician or a musician in general?
I think I'm pretty used to it now. There's only a few times I've put out something in the last decade or so where I felt uncomfortable. But I think again, going back to the fact that I started writing songs when I was 11 years old. My dad was a singer songwriter, so I grew up with that being normal. And he was pretty confessional with his work, and it was pretty personal. So I already kind of had that framework. And the artists that I loved were also similar. I was super into Tori Amos and Sarah McLachlan eventually. I didn't know them when I was 11, but when I heard their music, I felt like we had a lot in common. And it
Mhm.
really resonated with me because Tori Amos, I heard Little Earthquakes when I was 15 years old. So I had all the drama of being 15 years old in that album. I was like, yes. And my friends were like, oh my gosh, she sounds just like you. And I'm like, I don't know, it's weird. So I used songwriting as a teenager to process everything. And I was super dramatic and I was a goth and all these things were happening. So I was writing songs called like Love is Pain and Suicide and all this stuff because I was a goth and I was listening to Susie and the Banshees and stuff. So like the artists that I liked were doing that kind of work. And as a singer songwriter, I just felt like that was where I could work out my stuff. And to this
Mhm.
day, I don't know how I would have survived my life if I didn't have that because it gives me a place to put things. And everybody has their own way of dealing with their emotions, but for me, it's songs. But I will say that the first time I ever played a song of my own live, it was terrifying. And it surprised me because I had been playing live for a while, but then I did my first song that I wrote in public and my foot was shaking on the pedal. I could barely pedal because I was shaking. I could barely play the piano because my fingers were shaking, my arms were shaking. I felt so exposed. I'm like, I'm singing this in front of like 200 people and it's completely about my life. I've learned to kind of disguise things, maybe not disguise, but I try to now to make my work as universal as possible so that I'm working through something, but people can take it and apply it to themselves. And I
Mhm.
think that also helps with the vulnerable aspect because I don't think a lot of people listen to my music thinking about my life. They're thinking about their own life. I mean, that's how most of us listen to music is to find the ways we can connect and empathize with one another. So I'm understanding that at the end of the day, people are going to make the song for personal. They're going to make it whatever they need it for themselves. And if they do want to think about, what they mean to me, that's perfectly fine. But I've just over the years I've just gotten used to it. And there's kind of a strength in it. It's a empowering feeling. It's kind of like you're taking all this stuff that's difficult for you and just putting it out there. And it kind of makes it go away from me a little bit because other people can kind of grab some of that weight and hold on to it for me.
I certainly feel that, and you have seen it a lot in my Facebook when I'm listening to your music. A lot of time, it reminds me of my own experience, and I think if I remember correctly, the precise word I have used in another interview that someone interviewed me for, I said it's like having a friend who is singing my feelings out for me, even though we might not know precisely what the circumstances are. So I think it's a pretty magical feeling when you're able to connect with the audience at that level, for
Yeah, I
sure.
love that. And it's interesting because I really, and I really go there. Like I will go to some pretty intense places. So people
Mhm.
often will tell me, like, I say the things that they think at 3 o'clock in the morning, but would never say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you can say it a lot better than we can, for sure. And you wear many hats. You said you write your own music, you make your own arrangements, you write your lyrics. And so, for people who are wanting to start creating their own music, what are your suggestions in terms of getting started? What are some of the fundamentals we should have when we want to create music?
I think the first thing everyone needs to realize is that you're going to write a lot of crap before you're going to write anything good. You have to practice like anything else.
Right.
So it's hard not to judge yourself, but I always tell people you have to get out of your own way.
Hmm.
I surrender myself to the process in a lot of ways. I mean, I have to be thinking very critically. I have to be making a lot of decisions, but I try not to judge it. I'm like, this is what's here today, and I can write another song tomorrow if I need to, and this can go in the garbage. It's totally fine. Every song is almost like an experiment or practicing. And then if you like it, you edit it or tweak it however you want, or make changes if you need to. And then think critically. I think, like you said, I do wear many hats, but I'm very good at saying, I'm taking this hat off, I'm
Hmm.
putting this hat on. So when I'm in producer mode, I have to be very objective. I have to look at the whole collective. When I'm the singer, I have to be thinking like a singer. When I'm playing the piano, I have to be a piano player. When I'm the songwriter, I'm the songwriter. And so I don't worry about being any of those other things when I'm being the one. So if I'm writing the song, I'm just writing the song. That's all I need to do. That's my job right now. But when I'm in producer mode or when I'm mixing, especially, what's interesting for me is when I'm mixing a record, all my emotion is gone. It's all science. I'm thinking sound, 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 and
Hmm.
it's I need to tweak this and change that, and this EQ needs to change, or I need more reverb or less reverb, or this effect or that effect. And for a couple weeks while I'm mixing the record, I just have no emotional connection to it. My cat's in the background.
I can see it.
It's the world we're in, right? The Zoom world.
Yes.
So I just I have no emotion in the record at all. But interestingly, after the mixing is done, it becomes completely emotional because that's my last moment with that record before it's going to go out to the world.
Right.
And once I release it, it's never the same for me ever again. But I think when you're writing, you have to be willing to have a lot of stuff that's not good for a while and be okay with that. And you just need to get what you get. And if it's not a good day, then come back to it another time. I don't stress myself out. I don't say you have to write this many songs a day or a week or a month. I'm like, if I'm not feeling creative, I make myself try for an hour. And if it's just not there that day, then I do something else. It's that simple.
I'm really starting to develop the appreciation of sort of time boxing yourself to a certain time frame and go through something. And if it doesn't happen, learn to let it go and come back to it. You talk about recording the harp 20 times before you got a good take, right? A lot of us who try to record ourselves playing on the harp goes on for hours before we even have one take. And at one point, my teacher said, you know what, free strike and you're out. Like, don't stress it out. Just learn to let it go. And I think I can hear that in your message for sure. And you also, in I've seen in your conversations and comments, a very strong background in music theory, which I'm gonna say it's probably the fundamental building block for anyone who is creating music. A lot of us also found it very challenging to learn music theory. Any suggestions on how we can go about doing it in a more digestible way?
That's an interesting one. Theory for me came very naturally, and I didn't understand why it was hard for people because for
Mm.
me it made a lot of sense. But I also had a very enthusiastic teacher. I
Right.
think you have to find a way to get enthusiastic about it. One thing that I find helps when I'm working with students is to have them take a song that they like a pop song or whatever it is, and figure out the theory of it. Like if this is a one chord and then they went to a four chord and then they went to a six chord, and like
Right.
map it out, because then they're learning theory with something they enjoy and it doesn't feel
Mm.
so like industrial or whatever the word is. It doesn't feel so cold, but because it is, a lot of it's kind of math and then it gets really complicated. But I think if you approach it with enthusiasm and understand that it is going to be very, very helpful to you, because when I'm writing a song, I'm on the piano or whatever instrument I'm on, and my brain is immediately thinking I can go from this chord to here, 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 or here. And I can make it really simple, or I can make it really interesting, or I can make it really strange. And those are all the choices that I have. But I always tell people, like, you can't break the rules in a cool way unless you know the rules.
Right. That is
So
true.
it really it helps me, I mean, immensely, because now it's completely second nature. But you just have to stick with it, just like playing an instrument, and understand
Mhm.
that just like the boring parts of learning an instrument, like playing scales, learning theory is an important part of composition that you just have to like hunker down and figure it out.
I'm gonna try your suggestion and see if I can take a song that I'm particularly happy with and break it down, and I'll let you go how that I'll let you go
Yeah.
let you know how that goes. I have seen a lot of lyrical dances that use your song Bloom from Standing at the Edge. Now, I have made a harp arrangement for Letter to the Moon #1, which is from your instrumental album Letters to the Moon. What is it like for you to see other people give your music a different life?
It's a strange feeling. Like it's very humbling. Like I feel really honored and excited that people would care about my work enough to do something creative with it, or do their own version of it, like cover songs and things like that, like your interpretation. It's just it's weird, because as a songwriter or a composer, you start with nothing, and then you create something, and then it becomes something to someone else. And when something like Bloom, I mean, people all over the world dance to that song. It just be
Mm.
kind of came up. It's my #1 selling song. It's my #1 streaming song of my whole career. And I, see YouTube videos of it all the time. I've actually done even where I've played it live in person, and people have danced to it in
Oh.
California, where they flew me out and paid me and all this stuff. And so to see another genre, like to see modern dance, like really embrace a song of mine like that, it's become something so important to so many people. And that's just a really fulfilling feeling. Like as an artist, you want people to embrace your work, but you also know that you put it out into the world and you have no say over what happens. People will like it or they won't like it, and that's not up to me. So to see people really embrace it like that is just really special to me.
And on the flip side of that coin, you have also done covers, and I've seen, for example, your mashup that you've done for "God Rest Your Merry Gentlemen," and also you have done Taylor Swift's "Epiphany."
Mhm.
And what is it like then for you to be a performer and taking someone else's song and give that a different life?
Playing covers to me is like recess. Like it's super fun. It's not my song, it's somebody else's song. It's like I get to do something outside of myself, but still, expressing myself, but through someone else's work. Because of course I'm a fan of music too. So there's lots of artists that I like and I want to sing their songs. So I just usually, it depends on, like with COVID, there were a lot of songs I was covering just to try to process, especially in the beginning of COVID, because I
Mhm.
was feeling so scared and emotional and just lots of and anxious. So there were lots of ways that I just wanted to play somebody else's song to help me through that experience. But it's also just fun to interpret somebody else's work. Again, it's like recess is the fun part of what I do.
That's awesome. Now, here, this one, I want to ask you this question because in one of the two albums actually that you have done, folk song album, you have set some poems into music. There is The Caps and the Bell, Everlasting Voices, and Into the Twilight. In I think that one is from The Sun is Burning. And then in
Yes.
another album, you did The Raven. Which is from in the album The Parting Glass, and my son, for whatever reason, really enjoyed it. He called it the bird song. And in one of your interviews with the Rapadians in 2011, you mentioned that you're a very melodical driven musician and it's hard for you to take words and turn them into music. What was it like for you to take someone's word and put that to music? Was that process challenging for you? Did it come naturally or did
No,
it come with some
it's so
challenge?
hard. I have a really hard time with that because I write all the music first. In fact, with most of my records, I do the entire production of the song before I even write a word or a melody or anything. So I have an entire instrumental track with drums and everything. And then I sit down and go, okay, what should the melody be? And I just sing nonsense and try all sorts of stuff, and some of it sticks and some of it doesn't. And then I write the words. And when I'm writing the lyrics, I know that it has to be like blah 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 da 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 da, whatever, whatever that rhythm is. I have to write exactly to that, which a lot of people think is really hard. A lot of the songwriters I know think that's harder. So they write their words first and then figure out the rhythm. But when I was setting those poems, it was a challenge. And I purposefully was challenging myself to do it because I really wanted to. Again, I'm a fan of Loretta McKenna, and she does a lot of that. So with a folk song record, I'm like, this is an opportunity for me to do something original, but with somebody else's text. So I had to really just recite the poem until I could figure out what is the rhythm that will work for music, because it's not the same as speaking. So I would have to kind of just come up with some sort of like melody or something, even if it was just temporary, so I could figure out what is the rhythm of this. So, you know, when you're looking at the Raven, it's like blah, blah, da, 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 da. It's really simple because the way he wrote it, it just kind of loops itself around. But with the Yeats stuff, it was a little bit more tricky with Cap and Bells and Everlasting Voices into the Twilight. So I just had to mess with it, but it takes me a lot longer to figure that out because I always go music first, then lyrics. So I'm very happy with how they turned out. The Raven was also difficult because I had to abridge it. So I had to figure out which
Right.
verses I was going to eliminate, because if I had done, and it's already like something like 11 minutes long, but if I
Yeah.
had done the whole poem, it would have been like 18 minutes long. And I was like, no one's going to stick around for that. So I had to figure out what to get rid of and still keep the story intact. So that was also a challenge.
I think they worked out really well.
Thank you.
Like I said, my son can actually sit through the whole 11 minute of The Raven, which I'm very impressed, and he's only
Yeah.
6 years old right now. Um, Also, I want to talk about sing and play because a lot of us would like to sing and play, and my harp teacher tried to get me to do it. Unfortunately, I can sing or play. And you do a lot of sing and play while you're performing. How do you prepare yourself to be able to sing and play, and also to deal with a large audience potentially? That's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on. And again, it was just practice. I had to do it and fail a lot. I started singing and playing when I was very young, like 12. So I had a lot of years before I was really in public. I mean, I did things like play at churches. I'm not even religious, but I would play at churches and things like that on Sundays for like $25 when I was 15 or 16 or 14 years old. And actually in middle school, I started doing that. So I must have been about 12 or 13. And I just for a long time was not great at it. But rehearsal is really important. I have to know the song inside and out so that I don't have to worry about it. Like my hands, it's muscle memory. My hands pretty much know what to do, so I can focus more on singing because that's the hardest part. When you're live, you know, I have to make sure that I'm hitting all the notes and in tune and all these things. And it's not like a piano or a harp where you tune it and you're good. My voice can go out of tune at any moment. Well, I mean, I guess like a violin or a harp can too. But like when you're playing a keyboard or a piano, you're good to go because I don't have to worry about that part of it. But it definitely, again, was just a thing of doing it and doing it and doing it. And when I'm out of practice, I can tell it's hard, it's difficult. I make a lot of mistakes. I'm not a perfect performer at all. I make lots of little flubs, and some musicians are like that and some aren't, and it's totally fine. So again, yeah, I just had to keep doing it and doing it and doing it, but it doesn't come easily to anyone, I don't think. But it's definitely easier than it used to be. But it's you've got a lot going on because you're pedaling if you're playing the piano, you've got your hands moving, you're singing, you have to remember the words, which is the worst thing for me now, is that I can never remember the words to anything. It's interesting, if the song is like 25 years old, I know it inside and out, but if it's newer, I forget the words all the time. And so now with most of my newer songs, if I'm playing live, I have to actually have the words on stage so I can read them because I'll just forget. And yeah, then you have the audience too. And every audience is different and you can feel it. And if you lose them, you can't get them back. So you have to really figure out, how am I going to keep this audience engaged? Again, because my music is so intense, that's not as difficult, but it's definitely, I feel it. Like when I was touring in the past, every city would feel completely different from the one before. And so I would have to shift. Sometimes I even change my set list in the middle of it because I just feel like the audience needs to go a different direction than what I had planned on.
What's the most important thing for you when you're playing live, in terms of your connecting with the audience? What aspect is the most important for you in any of the live performance that you have done? Which can you pinpoint to one common thing
Yeah,
that matters for you the most?
it's like acting. I have to be authentically in the moment of the song. So if there's people get mad at me sometimes because they'll come to a show and I don't play their favorite song or what they would expect me to, or the hits. I mean, I have songs that are more popular than other songs, but that I don't feel obligated to play them. So for a long time, my song Hollow and I were not good friends. I just had grown very tired of it. So I stopped playing it live. And people would get mad, but I'm like, if I'm not into it, it doesn't work.
Right.
I have to be in the zone. I have to engage with the song. I sometimes will notice I'm losing the audience if I'm on stage and thinking, okay, tomorrow I have to do laundry, and then and it happens. You would think with all that stuff going on, I wouldn't daydream, but sometimes you do, and the audience can tell. So again, it's very similar to acting. You have to be in the zone and in the moment of the song.
That makes sense, and I hope one day that I will be able to hear you sing live. Right now, I'm just enjoying your really large back catalog and your occasional YouTube video that you're sharing right now. Um, as a independent musician, if you have to share one message to the world and let them know this is something very important, what would that be?
I think again, the best thing you can be is authentic. I think you shouldn't worry about what other people want. You should worry about what you want. I always say, I make a record that I would want to listen to. That's my whole goal. Is this something I would want to play? And so I do listen to my own work. Some people think that's weird. Some artists say they never listen to their work, but I think they're all lying. But why wouldn't I want to hear it? So I think again, like if you're passionate about something, do that thing. Don't worry about what the world is going to think, because somebody's always going to like it and somebody's always going to hate it. And again, that's not up to us. So you have to find your tribe. Like you have to find your people that are going to be into what you're doing, and not worry too much about trying to appeal to everyone, because that's impossible.
You're not making records right now, but you have a pretty big catalog. How else can we stay in touch aside from perusing your Bandcamp store?
Well, of course, I'm on social media. So I have a Facebook page, Instagram, and Twitter. So those are good places to stay in touch with me, because I'm pretty active, as you you know well. I'm on there a lot because it's a way for me to connect with people, especially now when I'm basically shut in at home because I'm at high risk for COVID. So social media has been kind of a lifeline for me, good and bad. Some of it hasn't been great, but I try to keep things as positive as possible, or at least again authentic. I'm very honest online, but that's a good way to stay in touch with me for sure.
Are you planning to do more podcasts? Because I really enjoyed Standing at the Edge.
Yes, so I'm planning my second season. I was going to start it this week, and then I just didn't get to it. But yeah, this next 12 episode season two is going to be each episode is going to be about a different record. So it'll be about the process of making the record. It'll be talking about some of the songs on the album. So I'm starting with my album Lily Sleeps, which was my second full album, and the first album I produced by myself. I started it in 1996, so a long time ago. So I'm going to go through that. I was 19 when I started that record, so it was quite a journey. I wrote over 90 songs for that album over 9 months. And I experimented with all sorts of different styles and sounds, because I was just trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do? Who am I, kind of thing. And so it was definitely an experience. So I'm going to talk about that for 30 minutes. Hopefully next week that'll come out.
Awesome. I'm going to include the link to your podcast landing page so that the audience can check it out.
Great.
And awesome. And do you have any suggestions for audience who have never listened to your music as a starting point?
Ooh, that's tough.
It is
A
tough. Maybe
lot
a
of
couple of suggestions.
Well, a lot of people start with Standing at the Edge, because that was my, big glossy produced album, but I would caution people not to expect the rest of my work to be exactly like that, because that was produced by, Patrick Leonard, who worked with Madonna and Jewel and all sorts of people, which was an amazing experience, but that's somebody else's, hands on my work a little bit. But a lot of people also start with my album Divide, which was the album right after Stand at the Edge, my first independent album that I actually got to release. I made 4 records before I made Stand at the Edge, but I didn't really get to release them. My first one got released on CD through my independent label in 1996. But yeah, Divide came out in 2005, and a lot of people really love that record, and I think it's very representative of who I am. And I think if you like the record Divide, you'll probably like the rest of them, at least somewhat. Some you might like better than others. I've had records that are more well received than other ones, and that's okay. So, but yeah, those would be my 2 suggestions on where to begin.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending the time and talking to me about harp and also all things music. And I hope you're going to enjoy Casey's music too. And I wholeheartedly agree. Divide is a very good album to start. There's a couple of tracks in there I often listen to myself, so I recommend that as a good starting point. Thank you. And I look forward to connecting with you again. Hopefully I'll see the podcast coming out soon.
Yes, thank you so much for having me as a guest. It's been really fun to talk about all this stuff. I don't get to do it that much these days.
It's lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.